Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.
Hi, it's Rita here at the Travel Nurse Channel, and it is Tuesday, and tardy. I'm so sorry. I couldn't get my keyboard connected. It's connected now. And anyway, so I'm normally here Tuesdays from 10 to 11. It's 10:10 right now, Pacific Standard Time. So hello, travel nurses. Hello, people in the travel industry. You are so needed. That's part of our title. You are definitely needed. But I think a topic that we like to talk about too is how are you paid? What are you paid? And I'm pretty sure next week on Tuesday, we will have a travel nurse financial advisor. So that will kind of complete the loop of how do we do this? How do we get paid? What states maybe pay the best? Where are you needed the most, and so forth. And then a financial advisor can give us a lot of input from his experience. And hopefully it will help you. So let's start with traditionally, which states pay the most. And then it's an older topic. We've talked about it before, and we'll hit on some other topics related to it, like emergency. Sometimes there's a huge need, and so there will be some fast staffing. You may just go in for a week or two. It may involve strike and so forth. So some of those rates are pretty amazing. And there are some nurses that pretty much do the strike nursing. It's what they do. They're patient advocates. Not everybody's going to be politically in agreement with that, but you know, we all are in charge of ourselves, not others. So we can talk about that a little bit too. I welcome you to, let me open up my comment line. See, this is kind of one of the reasons I need a keyboard. Okay, it is open. And so this is a live stream. You can call in. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and I'm not sure where else we are, but we're definitely in those areas. OMD, Moklasur Rodman. Hello, hope you're doing good. I'm doing very good. Thank you. My wrist is healed. I have a little hurt toe, but I'm doing very, very well. Thank you. Isn't that like knock on wood? Your health is so, so important. And yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. Nice to see you. And let's get on with talking about where nurses are paid well. Traditionally, Massachusetts, let me go to my reference here. Traditionally, California, New York, Massachusetts, Texas. We've talked about Texas and a lot of growth there, Austin and different areas in Texas needing nurses quite a bit. So California, New York, Texas, Massachusetts, Alaska, a great frontier, a great frontier. I would love to visit there sometimes. Another state you may be interested would be Nevada, Oregon, a beautiful state, and Washington, D.C., big city or capital city, and the District of Columbia. So yeah, so those are some of the states that pay the most, that have a lot of needs. The top, I would say, would be the California, Texas, New York, Massachusetts, and I didn't mention the state of Washington. I mentioned Washington, D.C., but the state of Washington as well. Now, I know a lot of nurses dream about Hawaii, you know. Hawaii is a great state, not necessarily always the highest paying state, but if you check, if you associate yourself with a recruiter and say, these are my top, these are my top places where I'd like to travel. Let me know when the rates are high. So if New York is on your list and Hawaii is on your list, and at the moment, and actually for the last year or so, New York was paying higher, you may go to New York, and then you may anticipate in the next several months of trying a travel assignment in Hawaii when the rate goes up. And I don't know when that is, what time of the year, but the recruiter might know. There are sometimes some traditions where the rates go higher. So yeah, so I want to talk about that. And I did want to tell you too, this time of the year when we're starting to think about we have to gather information for our taxes, that would be a great time if you could set aside the time, or at least tune into the video when you do have time. We're live on Tuesdays from 10 to 11. And, oh gosh, I'm going to have to answer that later. I have, my healthcare is calling about I think I may have a broken toe. So we'll take care of that later. I'm sitting now. The pain is under control. Yeah, the financial advisor may be able to help you navigate doing your taxes when you're in different states and so forth. And I don't think it's a big concern. And many of you travelers that have done traveling for some time may be very clued into that. But I thought if we're going to talk about that, I really would like an expert. I don't want to say too much about that. We'll leave that to the expert. But we will talk about states and needs and where you can make the most money and what kind of salaries we're talking about. And we've talked about on other episodes, there's a lot to it. So some assignments are offering bonuses, and they come with a lot of criteria. Some of them provide free housing and so forth, and using your salary and your stipend for housing or transfers and so forth. So the monies go in different places, and the tax opportunities go in different places. So there's a lot to think about. I should pull out some of my notes that may relate to that. Give me a moment. I always have to flip through all of these and see where the information is. Okay. Yes. So when you are arranging to travel, if you're experienced, this is not news to you, but to many nurses that are considering traveling, to the newer nurses that are finally having some opportunities, because traditionally travel nursing, you needed to have experience, but the doors are opening for newer nurses to travel and to get the jobs they want. So I'd like to go over some of the things that that you should consider. Number one, you should decide what you want. Do you want to work days? Do you want to work nights? Do you want to work on the East Coast, the West Coast, the Midwest, the South, Alaska, Hawaii, you know, all these popular places? Or maybe you're just looking for a different travel experience. So you've been working in a rural area, you want to work in a city, or you've been working in a city and you want some time in the country. So know what you want, and then you have to research travel companies. There are many, 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 over 300 travel companies for nurses, travel companies for therapists, travel companies for techs, travel companies just for long-term care, travel companies that focus primarily on women's care, obstetrics, and labor and delivery. So do your research, find out which travel maybe there's a travel company in your town. So maybe that's convenient. You can actually meet with your recruiter if that's important to you. There are big travel companies. We've talked about that. Who has the highest rating? Some of the bigger companies have higher ratings. Some of the smaller companies do as well. So do your homework. Talk to 2 or 3 different companies, you know, after you've done your homework and kind of narrowed it down to what works for you. and start talking about what you want. So you definitely want to work nights, or you definitely want to work days. You definitely want 12-hour shifts. You do not want overtime, or you do want overtime. You do want to float, or you don't want to float. And that may tie into your specialty. So if you are a step-down nurse, and that's the place you are loving and have your most experience and enjoy all the things with that job, that will easily cross over to possibly telemetry or to the ICU, because the step down is right in between there, right? It may even fall into med-surg. So you need to talk to your recruiter about what practices the hospital you're thinking about traveling to follows. Many hospitals follow pretty strict float rules, and that can be difficult. I know some of the hospitals I worked with as a clinician, as a clinical manager, I did a lot of work with Kaiser, and they had a strong float policy. Not only did you float, but you could float multiple times per shift. And that can be very exciting for some people. They're there, they can triage like nobody's business, they can chart like nobody's business, and they can transfer all that throughout the day. So I'll start my day over here in this telemetry unit, then they need me down there to cover lunches on the med-surg unit, and then they're going to send me to a step-down unit or to some tele-holding in the ER. So that's a pretty varied day, but that works for some people. They are enthused by it and energized by it. Their day goes fast. They like it. Maybe that's not you. So find out. Don't be unpleasantly surprised when you arrive there. Okay, that's kind of off the topic line. But let me get back here so I can look at these travel misoccurrences. No, what I'm looking for is what will count as far as your salary. And there's more to it than just being paid your hourly rate and your overtime and potentially your bonus. We can talk about that. Okay, this has a little bit to do with pay, but this would be what you probably won't see on a travel contract. These are things that you may have with the job you're at, right? So you may have a pay scale or some kind of tier pay, so that after 1 year or 5 years or whatever, that you get to sit down and talk about incremental pay rates. You may have earned some paid time off. You may be very comfortable because you've had the same employer, maybe the same manager. You have family time because when you travel, if you're a family person, they may or may not travel with you, so that's something to consider. And you may have to make more effort to commit to your job as a traveler, whereas if you go to the same place day after day, month after month, year after year, you know exactly where you're going. Well, it's a little more effort when you are traveling, because a lot of times you decide, oh, I'm kind of ready. I've been here in my small town for a long time. I'm going to New York City. And you get there for your traditional 13-week assignment, and the next thing you know, you've been there for 6 months or 9 months or 7 months because they like you, they need you, and they keep re-enlisting you. So that may not take a lot of effort. Number 5 was the increased effort due to having to get various jobs. If you travel and it works out well, you're happy, the client is happy, all of that, you may wind up being pretty committed and not having to look too far for your jobs. See, I wrote this months ago, and it's still the same. California, Texas, Massachusetts, state of Washington, and state of New York. And then I added in Alaska, DC, Washington, DC, Oregon has a lot of opportunities as well. Okay, so this isn't really what I was looking for, but these are some pros. These are some pros for our travelers that you may or may not have thought about. I'm going to go ahead and show you. Oftentimes you can make a great salary, and I'm going to divide that up and tell you how the salary works for a traveler, because some of it is taxed and some of it isn't. Great benefits. The benefit of the adventure part of it, the benefit to see new sights, the benefit to learn new things, the benefit of making friends, the benefit of learning something that enhances your talents. Let's see, opportunities to make good money, opportunities to stay longer than you expected, to many opportunities for growth as you add to your resume, that you could do something different with your career because of what you've learned and done. The freedom you have, you know, to unleash yourself from that staff position and all those meetings and all of the things that go with your job. Is never one part of your job, but many parts of your job. Well, when you're a traveler, you do your job and then you leave. So you have a little bit more freedom. Maybe the freedom to not have to pay a mortgage somewhere else. Maybe the freedom to get in a motorhome and do your travel assignments. So a lot of different freedoms that you wouldn't have staying at home at your regular job. And then, yes, resume upgrades for sure. I think I mentioned that in some of the benefits. Yes, you will upgrade your resume. Oh, yeah, you can avoid burnout. There are numerous opportunities and jobs throughout the country for you. And I wrote site, it's kind of faded because I probably poked it with my finger. You can have a lot of fun by changing location, maybe visiting, doing a travel assignment where your favorite cousin lives, or your favorite aunt, or your favorite uncle, changing locations and sightseeing. California, oh my gosh, Yosemite, Disneyland, go see Mickey, so many things. Okay, so I'm still not finding what I was hoping to tell you about. Maybe it's on a different card, but I'll keep looking. So the thing I'm looking for, to see if I've wrote it down somewhere. Oh, these cards. Okay. So there, when you go on assignment for traveling, there's a contract involved. There should be a contract involved. It's always a good thing to have a contract, because the company that you work with for traveling has a relationship. I'm hitting a wire here. Has a relationship with the facility, whether it's a long-term facility, an acute facility, a clinic, a doctor's group. There's a contract. And I want to say the bulk of assignments are usually going to be at hospitals and acute facilities, but there are many jobs out there. So we'll just go with that, because that's the one I'm most familiar with, having worked with Kaiser. Many of my nurses were working in hospitals. Some were doing case management, some were doing long-term, some were doing clinics. But the huge bulk of my experience was that nurses were working in hospitals, either as a labor and delivery nurse or an ICU nurse, et cetera, et cetera. So they were impacted. Their pay was impacted by a couple of things. One, the salary. What salary did you settle on? You're working 12-hour shifts. Do you get paid time and a half, or is it you're paid by the week? Well, usually you're paid every 2 weeks, but so you're paid for hours per week. If you're doing 12-hour shifts, that's 36 hours per week. So you may not be getting overtime, or you may. So some hospitals these are questions to ask. What is my salary? Does it include time and a half after 8 hours in a shift? And where's the rest of the monies that you're going to be getting? Well, if you're relocating out of state, some travel assignments are 50 or 100 miles from home. So you may not be traveling out of state. You may take your own car, or you may get a stipend to rent a car. Maybe you don't have a car. So there's all these pieces to talk about when you're going on a travel assignment. Your salary, of course, you have a salary. Is there time and a half? Question to ask. Your stipend, what does that mean? Do they have a relocation stipend? Do you get a certain, not bulk, but a certain figure amount, whatever it may be, $2,000, random, just throwing that out there. So if you get $2,000 to relocate from wherever you are to New York, that may not be taxed. That may be part of the stipend that is needed for you to be able to get to that assignment. That may include the airfare or the train fare or the gas, but you get this set amount. I'm saying $2,000. It could be a lot more or a lot less. I'm just throwing that number out there. But you get this amount of money. It's not taxed. It's necessary money. It's given to you as a stipend to relocate. Then there is monies to stay in that location safely. Somebody's saying, I know in nursing there are many 12-hour shifts. Is it true that we get paid straight time for 8 and double time after 8? Or would it be double time for 4 hours? Okay. I am not aware of double time. I am aware of, I'll give you an example. When I was doing per diem nursing, when I was a clinical nurse, not a manager, any of that, so I might go to hospital A on Monday, hospital B on Tuesday, and hospital C on Wednesday and Thursday, or Friday and Saturday. So I was at different hospitals each time I went to work. So I would work 8 hours at straight time, and the last 4 were time and a half, not double time. So if I were getting $30 an hour the first 8, I would get $45 the last 4. And that's how I would get paid, in hours per shift, because I was not at the same hospital. So travelers generally are considered temporary staff. They should be treated as team members, and just as staff would be treated. And generally they're paid for their hours per week. And there is not always time and a half involved. Double time is generally if you're working a 12-hour shift, regardless if it's 8 or 12. But double time usually comes in when you surpass the 12 hours in a day or the 40 hours in a week, or in the case of 12-hour shifts, it could be after 36. All great questions to ask, because I'm not in charge of that, and it will vary from state to state. In California, hours after 8 are considered overtime, time and a half pay, and hours over 12 in a day or 40 in a week, that is all overtime pay. And when you exceed it to a certain extent, 12 in a day, it would go into double time. But it's straight time. I just threw 30 out there. I hope nurses are making more than that in California now. They are. That's back in the day. I thought that was good pay. It's a little higher than that now, particularly in Southern California or places like San Francisco, California. But just to make the point, 30 hours is your straight time pay. Time and a half would be 45. Double time would be 60. Just to have a math, a peak. Double time doesn't usually occur after 8. It's time and a half after 8. Thanks for that question. That's helpful to clarify that. But so know about how your money is coming. So there will be salary money. There will be transportation money or relocation money, stipends. There will be maybe a stipend for your apartment. Maybe they offered a certain apartment with a roommate and you decided you didn't want a roommate, and so you get a stipend that covers a portion of that apartment. But these are good monies to make and to discuss because they're not taxed. Sometimes you prefer days, but they're only offering nights. It's the city you want, and you thought, oh, I think I'll try that. And you would want to ask, is there a night differential? So that may add more money to your salary. If you flex from days to nights, say, look, on my days, my regular shift, I want to work days, but I will do an occasional night shift. You know, if I have time off and time to recover from that, what's the benefit of that? Is there a stipend? Is there not a stipend? I'm sorry, a differential. So sometimes for the later shifts, there will be a differential. And then I was talking about these special assignments. They're called crisis or rapid relief. There are some companies that really do focus on that. Some travel companies that focus primarily on that, or some of the bigger companies, the travel companies, do some of that because they're working with a specific client, and they say, oh, you've helped us so much here at this hospital and we're anticipating a strike. Can you help us? Can you get some relief? We're expecting it, and they'll give you a date. You know, it's going to occur on May 15th or something, or right after taxes, you know, I don't know, except that would be April 15th, wouldn't it? So sometimes they need a response. You may be on a travel assignment and it's about to end, and they say, shortly after your assignment, there's going to be some kind of crisis. We need you to respond within 48 hours. Will you be available to do that? And you may. So you may go on your assignment. It may end on April 15th, and they're talking about this crisis occurring on April 20th or April 17th. And that may work out well for you because you may have given yourself a week break or something between one travel assignment and the next. I hope I'm making sense. I seem to be jumping around a bit. So let's say you go on a 13-week assignment and you're in the middle of it now. It's about to end this month. It's already April 7th, 6th. Today's April 6th. So your assignment is going to end in 10 days or so. It ends on April 15th. And your company calls you, and you're in New York doing your assignment, having a blast, and staying safe and seeing the sights, those tall buildings of New York City. And they say, a hospital nearby where you were is going to have a crisis, and they're going to offer crisis pay, which could be double time or a couple $100 a day or $5,000 for the week, whatever it is. Would you be available within 48 hours? We think the crisis is going to occur between April 17th and April 21st. So you make that decision. You might want to ask more details about it. Is the crisis due to strike? Is the crisis due to, a huge influx of patients coming in and them not having the staff to cover that? Find out what the strike is about, what the crisis is about, if it involves a strike, because some nurses just aren't comfortable with that. They feel like if their comrades are striking, they must have good reason. And so these are personal decisions, but money-making decisions too. So some agencies do not. When I was a clinical manager for my own company, I did not. It was really sticky business and time-consuming business. And after having discussions with my staff and with nurses that work for me, I realized I did not have a lot of staff that were interested in breaking strikes and nursing during strikes. There were one or two, and I understood that, and they're entitled to do that, but it wasn't something that my agency went into. But there are travel agencies that primarily do strikes, and there are some of the bigger companies, the cross countries of the world, and the big companies of the travel industry have divisions that just deal with rapid relief and crisis pay and strike, assignments and so forth. So another area to look at to see if you're going to make money there. So I'm not hearing too much from anybody here. Let's see if we can pull up some current rates, because I threw out a pretty low rate there. Let's see. Where are we? Oh, I moved all over the place today. How much do travel nurses make? Let's see. Let's get an idea of how much travel nurses are making in New York. How much are travel nurses making in New York City? Oh my goodness. Okay, now I would investigate this. The first thing that came up, it was in the news a year ago, okay, April 1st. It does seem like an April Fool's. And it's got a beautiful picture of the Statue of Liberty. And it's written by somebody called Angelina Walker. COVID-19 epicenter shifted from Seattle to New York, blah, blah, blah. But it says travel nurses and respiratory therapists are earning over $10,000 per week to work in New York City. Imagine that. Yeah, it spiked. It was actually, yeah, they have a diagram here, and that was April 2020. And they showed where nurses were the week before in March 2020, and then how it spiked in April. But it went back down by shortly after May. Wow. So one of the comments is the majority of nurses we talk to want to help regardless of the pay. And that's true. Here's something that nurses would call me about and be frustrated about. Say they were on assignment in Northern California. They were at a hospital. They were traveling for the company that I worked for. And new nurses were coming in. So they're on assignment for 13 weeks. So say they're 6 weeks in, right? They're almost at the halfway point. 13 weeks, 6, right? So they're halfway in. They've been there for 6 weeks. They've been working very hard, but they've been having a good time. After all, it's San Francisco, and all the things that make travel assignments good. Respect and cohesiveness of the staff. We talk about these things all the time. So we have a nurse on assignment, and let's just say step down unit, a nurse on assignment for my company for 6 weeks, doing well, staying healthy, just making a great impression, and glad she did. And while she's on assignment, another group of travelers are coming in, and they're coming in and getting paid more because there was some kind of crisis. There was a big drop in staff. They needed to bring people in. They needed to do it fast. And so now this nurse calls and says, why am I not getting? It's just life. It's just like those nurses may not be doing 13 weeks. They may not. They may be there just for a week or two. There may be caveats to them getting the bonus pay. And that would be something like you have to work 13 weeks. You have to never be late, never call in sick, float anytime we ask, blah, blah, blah. So if there are any hiccups in the criteria that was written into that contract for the crisis rate, whatever it was, I don't know, it was $10,000 a week, but it might have been something more like $100 more a week than the previous staff, or it might have been more dollars per hour, whatever it was, bonus pay, whatever it was. All you can say to your nurse is, it's the luck of the draw. When you were assigned, they gave you a good rate. We agreed to it. We signed a contract. The reason these other nurses are coming in for a higher rate is because there was some kind of crisis. If it continues when your assignment ends and you're interested, let me know and we'll talk to the client about it. So you just have to be reasonable and don't always think the grass is greener on the other side. It may not be. It more than likely is not. So that was interesting. The first pay rate I found when I searched for how much are nurses making in New York City was talking about a year ago when COVID first hit, and they went up to $10,000 a week. Isn't that amazing? Wow. Now, some of the big recruiting companies quote figures that maybe occurred, but it's not the standard. So what if you hear a huge high rate, question, is that what I'm going to get paid? Is that what they always pay? And so forth. Some nurses say, I did do it once and I'll never do it again, because it was like walking into a war zone. Patients, I met a travel nurse while I was still doing clinical nursing, and she had just come to San Diego where I was working, and she had been on a travel assignment and a big, I don't want to say public hospital, a city hospital, I think, in Los Angeles, and was devastated by some of the conditions of the patients. They had tubes that hadn't been treated. They had fungal growths in their chest tubes. I mean, you just hear real horror stories, and it seems like a war zone. Like, why aren't people being taken care of properly, and so forth. So that whole thing of that, fast relief and crisis and strike nurses and so forth, ask a lot of questions, and of course, always do your best job, your best work, regardless of the circumstances. You use your chain of command. You do the best you can. It's not likely that you'll hit a war zone or terrible conditions where patients are not being well cared for. But I've been around a long time. I've heard a few stories. And so, I think the more questions you ask, the more comfortable you're going to be with your assignment. So where are we? 10:48. We've got a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, let me see if I can get you some more rates. More rates. Let's see what nurses are getting paid in New York City. Okay, so this male nurse, funny picture of him. It's like a close-up, must be a selfie. It wasn't an easy decision, he says, but like thousands of nurses across the country, I was lured to New York City by images of mobile morgues. Compassionate guy, right? Statements of defeated nurses, a staggering number of ill and dying people growing by the day. Trauma. It's trauma. It's trauma for you nurses. And he was an ER and a critical care transport nurse in California. And the decision was not selfless. He said, I had bills to pay. I had a resume I wanted to pad. I had goals I needed to do and to remain competitive as a nurse. So these are things I've been talking about, that traveling not only can bring in some good salary, but it can provide opportunities going forward. Your resume improves, you learn things, you teach things, you have opportunities maybe on those jobs to do things that you didn't. I mean, I've been a nurse forever, and have I done absolutely everything? Have I worked with every kind of disease and every specialty item? I did in my day, but there's always things that you want to do more of. Maybe you worked in interventional radiology, but you did more things with the thyroid, or more things, more vascular things, more things with the lungs, whatever. But maybe you didn't have the opportunity to do things with the kidney. I don't know. So your travel opportunity just may provide that. Here's another nurse. Let's see what she has to say about traveling to New York and getting high pay. I turned towards people in a time of need. There was a global pandemic. My clinical skill set was ICU critical care, was the one that was sought after. I felt it was the perfect opportunity for me to be of great service to a cause. And they show her standing there with the first responders and the flags. And she is, oh my gosh, she has got a shield that looks like a dome over her head. She's got an N95 and another paper mask over it. And she's wearing disposable scrubs over her scrubs. And then there's a group. She's standing with a group. And my sister lives in New York City, so I felt by going, I am somehow an extension of helping my sister. Oh, that's a great story. So this site is not giving us any rates. I'm trying to see how much nurses are making in New York City right now. Yeah, ZipRecruiter. There's different recruiting companies. There's, like all of this, so many of them. Glassdoor, Indeed. What did I just say? ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor. There's so many of them. I would like to see like a nurse blog or a travel company. Let's see, travel nurses. 8,000 a week by Kaiser. Okay, there you go. There's an actual client. Let's see what the dates are. Need a COVID nurse? That'll cost you 8,000 a week. Wow. Oh, this is really sweet. This is a hospital. They're showing you a nurse's station. It looks crazy, actually. And on the wall of the nurse's station, they have hanging, they look like almost 8 by 10 glossies, the face behind the nurse. And so they have the full face of the nurse hanging on this wall because you go around like that, right? You don't know what your nurse looks like. Isn't that nice? That was nice. Let's see if we can see rates. No, it's a lot of discussions, people. But anyway, so $8,000. See if I can find a date. No, November 2020. So I'm not up to date on the rates. I'm not sure what the rates are. But we actually hope to have a financial advisor for you here next week. And I will do some research and find out some travel rates now. I'll do New York City and Los Angeles. How about that? 2 big cities, 2 different coasts. And I'll come up with some travel rates for you. And we can throw that out there. But we heard 10,000 a week in April 2020 when the pandemic just started in New York City. And we're hearing 8,000 a week in November 2020 in New York City being offered by Kaiser. So, yeah. I mean, you're going to work anyway. You may as well make some good money. All right. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be here every Tuesday. If I'm not, what I do is I'll record it on a day that I can be here. Occasionally, last week, I had to pre-record on Monday. And that only occurs when I have some emergent thing with a family member or an appointment that I have to keep, etc. So I'm always thrilled to talk to you. And it's Rita at the Travel Nurse Channel. We are your home away from home travel nurses, and we are here to inspire all nurses and to talk about all things travel. And it's not just nurses, it's lots of healthcare workers who travel and are needed in the travel industry. And thank you. Thank you for tuning in. My favorite commercial is coming up. So I'll end the stream with that. And I really thank you for being here and for all that you do. I love nursing. I've been a nurse forever, and I probably will never quit. Becomes part of who you are, just like being a child and a daughter and a sister and a cousin and all of that, and a mom, grandma. I'm a grandma now. Okay, take care, everybody. Have a beautiful week. I'll see you next week.
Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.